Hey guys, check out these 70-year-old oil filters, some 60, 50, 40, 30, and we have a modern oil filter on the screen now. That way you can remember it for comparison with the vintage filters we're about to show you. You may want to pause or slow down the screen so you can read the information on each box. Some things are pretty interesting actually, such as they actually filtered out additives. That's right, something that you wouldn't want to do. They called those typically conventional filters. And believe it or not, this is when they were actually starting to really upgrade the oil filters. And at first glance, you may not see any significant differences, but there actually were. And yes, that's right, Firestone actually made their own oil filters. Now, you'll see that we have Quaker State, Pennzoil, Fram, Wicks, STP, Texaco, and some others. We even have some Cartridge filters even before that time. Purolator. Wouldn't think there would be much of a difference with the gaskets, would you? Well, as you can see here, there's definitely a big difference. Look at this Fram gasket. It's paper thin and the material is lower quality. But look at these base plates. As you can see, the Firestone base plate, well, they both have rust, but it's untelling what conditions they were actually kept in, and we can't hold them accountable for that. But take a closer look. You can see these little notches. This is something that they didn't do in the beginning, and as time went on, yeah, they started doing it. This way it holds the gasket in place. This one, however, doesn't have that. I mean, this gasket, I would just touch the gasket, and it would literally just fall out. Even though you still have this problem with the gasket sticking to the block, really this is where it became extreme, and there was such a bad reputation for these gaskets sticking to the block. However, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen now, it's just not near as bad. Fram on the left, Pennzoil on the right. Guys, I know these are all different filters. They are all really old, but for some different vehicles. And as you'll notice, look at this anti-drain back valve. It's actually really thin and it's made of a very poor material. I'm not really sure what. See, it's somewhat similar to the anti-drain back valve for the Quaker State, the Firestone, but hey, I'm not knocking it because this is actually a good thing at the time. They weren't actually using anti-drain back valves on all the oil filters. This is something they slowly started to do over a period of time. Now, that's not the only thing, but a lot of them didn't have oil bypass valves. So in extremely cold temperatures, guess what? You were in trouble because the oil had a much harder time flowing. Now, as you can see, this base plate had some notches in it as well. So for the most part, a lot of the oil filter companies were actually starting to upgrade, and this is when we were starting to see some of the first changes. Now, these do look similar to the modern anti-drain back valves for the few filters that actually have them, but unfortunately, the materials were actually not the same. Now, yes, as I said, it's hard to find out what materials exactly they use. Sometimes it's hard for new filters, let alone a 70-year-old, 60-year-old, 50-year-old filter. Actually, this deal with the wicks, I liked it. They're actually not using a spring, but they're using this to hold everything in place. And you can see, guys, these housings, well, nothing special about them. They all seem to be okay. Don't want to waste too much time here. You can see the notch in the back of the filter. This is for the spring to stay in place, hold everything nice and tight inside the filter housing. They appear to all use this cellulose material, which then again was actually really good at the time because unfortunately they were using a lot of paper filters, which they called conventional, that caused a lot of problems filtering out additive packages and detergents. Yeah, you definitely wouldn't want something like that. Here's the Wix filter. Even then, they seem to make quality filters using steel on the inside, steel on the outside, top and bottom. They actually used a steel rib on the side, as you can see. Of course, it doesn't have an oil bypass valve, but hey, they improve over time, just like a lot of these other companies. Now that we got Texaco, STP, and Wix out of the way, we go ahead and move on to Pennzoil. Well, check this one out. No oil bypass valve, no anti-drain back valve. Seems like a modern day Fram oil filter. Nothing wrong with the canister or housing. Spring for the Fram. Hey guys, moving on up. Back in the old days, steel top and bottom. Seem to be pretty decent quality. You can see they have a gasket here. They do not have any type of anti-drain back valve or anything of that nature. If there's any information you guys can provide on some of these vintage oil filters, it would be greatly appreciated. Here we have the Firestone. They do have a steel center tube. Seem to be a decent quality oil filter. As I said, they all seem to use cellulose materials. No bypass valve as well, but it does have an anti-drain back valve. It's not that great material, but hey, the fact that they even have one is outstanding. In Quaker State, well, I've not heard of them making any filters recently, but I'm not sure. Maybe they sell them somewhere else. Maybe not in America. You can see this one appears to be a Fram special with the string around it and cardboard on the top and bottom. But hey, they actually do have an oil bypass valve, which this filter is a little bit newer, as you can tell. The materials for the anti-drain back valve are pretty good, but we have cartridge filters as well. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to use a grinder or something to cut the Wix cartridge filter and this Riverside cartridge filter. But I actually broke that piece of cork off the top of that Wix filter when I was trying to actually cut it open. Here is the window you can see into this filter. I thought it was pretty interesting. They actually used thread to hold this purolator filter covering around it. And you can see I easily, in just a matter of seconds, just peel it off like an onion. I'm not saying that's an issue. As I said, it's an old filter. This is just for being interested. Thanks for watching. Nate's Interactive Auto.